At Project Black Gold, we use the thermal aerobic method, also known as hot compost, in community food scrap composting. Come with us as we take you through our process. It's a bit like cooking. You need two types of ingredients, nitrogen and carbon.
In cities, food waste and scraps are usually thrown away. Did you know that they are actually a valuable source of nitrogen? There are many ways to get food scraps. You can ask your local fruit and vegetable seller for discarded scraps.
Your community can save their food scraps and bring them to the compost station. When fresh food scraps are composted properly with other materials, they become living nutrients that can be returned to the soil to regenerate it. This is called nutrient cycling. It's one of Earth's natural biological systems. At Project Black Gold, we like to compost the rainbow. The more variety of nitrogen-rich materials, the better. For beginners, we recommend starting with fruit, vegetables, and garden prunings, all of which are good sources of nitrogen.
Cut up food scraps into smaller pieces. This will help the naturally occurring microbes in our environment break them down faster. Yep, you heard right! Microbes. When we make a pile of compost, we are creating the ideal conditions for beneficial aerobic microorganisms to thrive. They love feasting on nitrogen materials because it provides protein for them to grow. Tea leaves, coffee grounds, and bokashi pre-compost are great sources of nitrogen too. Don't throw them away.
Another common type of food waste are eggshells. They're a source of calcium carbonate. Crush the eggshells before adding to the compost. Dried leafy and woody materials are an important source of carbon. We live in a city in nature, where there are lots of dried leaves, dried grass cuttings, twigs, and branches around. We also like to use pure untreated wood shavings and landscape tree waste from our street trees. They help food scraps break down better. In a hot compost pile, these carbon materials become carbohydrates for our microbes, providing them with energy.
Layering your materials in the right proportions is key to a successful compost. It's a bit like making a layer cake. The first layer of the compost is carbon. The next layer is nitrogen. Keep layering by alternating carbon and nitrogen materials. The proportion is 2 to 3 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. If you have made compost from an earlier session, you can add that compost to the same pile as a third layer.
The same layering principles and proportions apply regardless of the compost size or setup. You can freeze your food scraps in between compost sessions. Just break them up as much as you can before adding them to the pile. Spread the layers evenly. Wood shavings are a good partner because they break down at the same rate as the more perishable food scraps. This prevents the food scraps from rotting in the compost. Leaves are a very good source of slow-release carbon and will provide longer-term food for the microbes. When you're more experienced, get adventurous. Here are some examples of other materials you can use. Bread can be used as a source of carbon sparingly. Stale hardened bread can be soaked first and then broken into the compost.
Used tea leaves and coffee grounds are also good nitrogen sources. Bokashi fermentation makes for a good pre-compost that breaks down easily in the pile.
Raw animal parts can be composted too, if your pile is bioactive enough. Chicken parts, fish guts and crustacean shells, Bear in mind that raw animal parts are very high in nitrogen and should be used in smaller quantities. Otherwise, the compost may overheat and affect the microbial life in the pile. Like humans, microbes need water too. Remember to add water as you go along.
The final layer on top should always be carbon. When you're done composting, cover it to protect from the rain.
You can use various materials such as canvas sacks, plastic sheets, cardboard, and even dried leaves. After a few days or a week, check in on your compost.
You can use a compost thermometer to take a temperature reading to see how well your compost is going. If you do not have one, you can still check by observing how well the food scraps are breaking down. If the food scraps are not cut up, they won't break down no matter how active your pile is. Microbes use up lots of oxygen as they go through their life cycle. Turning the compost will help to introduce fresh oxygen to keep them active.
Compost can dry out while digesting. Check the moisture levels and add water accordingly.
How do you know that your compost is ready? After resting for several weeks to several months, it should be teeming with life. The various carbon and nitrogen materials are no longer distinguishable. It smells pleasantly like soy and looks like moist chocolate cake.
A balanced compost should be slightly moist and crumble easily. When you squeeze a handful of compost, you should ideally get a drop of water. Your compost is now ready to be added to the soil. Remember to protect it with a thick layer of crushed leaves. You don't want your compost to dry out or wash away. Nature is the original compost maker. That's how she's been feeding the soil on our planet.
When we make compost, we are cycling nutrients back into the soil by learning to use what's already there. The leftovers, the discarded, and transforming that into living compost.
Now, more so than ever, we need to take action.
Join us on our collective journey in making black gold.